the idea of broad-based tariffs that I criticized in my remarks, this is not something that the Biden-Harris administration is supportive of at all. And I think the evidence from many research studies over decades is very clear that the burden of tariffs, it does operate like a sales tax. Broad-based high tariffs will raise the cost of the goods that we import and produce in competing goods domestically in the United States. This includes intermediate goods that are critical to domestic firms producing in the United States that will make them less competitive. It will raise the cost of toys and other consumer goods that we really don't produce in meaningful quantities in the United States, and raise the cost of living, particularly for low-income households, and it will diminish our competitiveness and raise inflation. And so I think these are a very bad idea. They would meaningfully raise the cost of living. Now, you mentioned the Biden administration's tariffs. And it is true that President Trump put in place significant tariffs against a pretty wide range of imports from China, and the Biden administration didn't get rid of them. And I think the main reason for that is that we look to China to address the practices that were emphasized in the 301 action, which went to issues of unfair competition. And China really did not address any of those issues. And until China made a meaningful attempt to respond to the 301 unfair trade practices, President Biden felt we should not reward China by lowering the tariffs. So we have put in place some additional tariffs, but it's on a narrow range of goods where we've decided that we want the United States consciously, sectors like semiconductors, renewables, clean energy, electric vehicles, where we really think it's important for the United States to have some production capacity, partly for supply chain resilience, that we don't want to be completely dependent on China, and partly because these are dynamic sectors where over time production leads to technological changes that reduce costs. We've certainly seen that with renewables, with solar power, with wind, that we'll see technological changes. These industries will promote that over time, and we want to have a presence in it. That doesn't mean that I mentioned friendshoring. It doesn't mean that we're trying to dominate these industries globally or not to work with partners. We have strong partnerships with many countries around the world and are looking to work with them to enhance supply chain resilience. And in line with this idea of modern supply side economics, the way I see that is over the medium term to promote growth, medium and longer term, one needs to be focused on the supply side of the economy. And traditional supply side economics that I would contrast my modern supply side economics with as an approach is always focused on kind of trickle down economics. Let's give tax breaks to corporations and to the richest individuals and try to stimulate their private investment with the hope it will trickle down through the economy. And I would contrast that with modern supply side economics, which really focuses on a much wider range of investments. Infrastructure, public infrastructure, which was all but ignored in the United States for way too long. To have a competitive economy, we have to promote our infrastructure. Boosting labor supply and creating conditions that enable people to work. This would include something like childcare to boost labor force participation. Training, workforce training is really critical to be able to fill the jobs that are going to be created by these investments in research and development. And the focus has been on this wider range of investments and trying to make them in ways that will bring opportunity to parts of the country that really have been suffering, and really places that lost jobs, I'd say between 1980 and the 2010s, partly because of China's entry into the WTO and our massive imports from China, but also broader forces, including technological change. We want to make sure that the investments that are being promoted go in an equitable way to parts of the country that haven't had the opportunities they should have. And what we're seeing in terms of the early returns on the hundreds of billions of dollars in investment that's been promoted by the CHIPS and Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, in clean energy, the investments are going disproportionately to counties with lower than average education, lower than average wages and incomes, and places that really need the good jobs and opportunity.